how would you best describe the poems in this book? What inspired you to write this new collection of poetry, please?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I don't, if I could describe the poems in Finna, I wouldn't, because I don't know, because that's why I write poems. I'm bad at describing them. But no, I think, so in a lot of ways, like this book really came out of my last book, Wild Hundreds, when I was touring that book around. It was sort of an interesting experience, right? Because, you know, I thought of that book as like a really loving book and in a lot of ways, a really joyous book, right? Certainly it had like, you know, darker moments or whatever, right? But yeah, generally I thought of it as a sort of joyous book. But I realized when I was touring it that a lot of like white folks I would encounter at readings and who would like reach out to me after having read the book or whatever, would be really complimentary, but then would also be like, oh, this book is so sad. It's like such a hard book, whatever. And I was like straight up confused by that, right? And it kind of made me, and so I think coming out of that, I had this desire to say, what can I write or what can I do now to sort of sidestep that conversation anyway, like sidestep this sort of notion of like white folks being preoccupied with the happiness or sadness of the book and say like, cool, like y'all can read it, y'all can listen to it, and that's fine, that's great, like God bless you. But like, I'm talking to Black folks, right? Like that's who I want to have this conversation with.
It makes sense. Now, the title, Finna.
Yeah.
Growing up, every Black kid was probably told that's not a real word. So just when you decide to make that the title of the book, what was the thought process behind that, Nate?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I think is like just a little bit of a flex, like, because I think so many of us have this like kind of fraught relationship to the word where people were, it was a thing that people tried to sort of correct out of our language. Mm-hmm. Even folks who would also sort of engage in that language. And so I think it's a little bit of a flex to be like, yeah, I'm a writer and I'm a professor and I say it's a word. So it's a, but I think beyond that, right, the thing I really love about the word finna, right, is that it's undeniably Black. It's undeniably Southern in its way. It is absolutely this word that is about everything next, right? Like inside of it sits a kind of optimism that you just have to reckon with, right? And it also, I think like the project of that reclamation of the word, of saying like, no, this is a word, this is us, is I think a kind of self-definition that Black folks stay doing, like in this country certainly, and stay being in the need of doing, right? So we want to figure out ways to turn away from these sort of like white definitions of success and power and whatever, and create our own way of thinking through the world.
Nate, born and raised on the South Side, correct?
Yes, sir.
How has Chicago, besides obviously Chicago slang, you're a writer, yeah, how else has your city impacted your work? Please, Nate.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think in a bunch of ways, right? So, you know, I'm from Chicago and my family also has like a fairly long history in Chicago. Like folks have been in the city probably at the earliest since like the late 19 teens, early 1920s, right? At least on one part of the side. But I think Chicago's impacted in a bunch of ways, right? So, you know, one thing about Chicago is like it's always had a really vibrant sense of Black politics, right? Both at the electoral level and in terms of like resistance and sort of on the ground stuff. And I think that shapes like my own political orientation, and that goes into the work that shows up in the work. And I think like this sense of having a sort of Southern lineage, right, is very much a Chicago thing, right? Like I remember when I was young and I would go to other cities, specifically go to like the East Coast, I would be shocked at like how many Black folks or folks who like read to me as Black people had roots elsewhere, right? Where like oh, I'm from the Caribbean, or, you know, I'm from Latin America, et cetera. I'm from the continent, whatever. And, you know, just overwhelmingly in Chicago, like, you know, we're two, maybe three generations removed from the South.
Facts. It's like I'm from Chicago or we're from Mississippi.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like
Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, like,
and that's where it ends, you know. Yeah, I get it, Nate. Moving on, it's been around 5 years since your first poetry book, The Wild Hundreds. In what way has your work kind of evolved since that moment, Nate? If you could speak on just your transformation since then.
Yeah, I think that's a, yeah, I think, so one thing about Wild Hundreds as a book is, in a lot of ways, it's really like a coming of age book, right? Which I think a lot of first books of poems are, and maybe first books broadly. They often are like these books where it's sort of like, this is how I became like the me that you see, right? You know, and so the book is, yeah, so I think that that's like a thing about that book. And I think one of the things about a lot of coming of age narratives, especially like self coming of age narratives, is that they tend to like make the self figure, the I figure in the work, a hero, right? And I think for me, in a lot of ways, the process of the last 5 years, both writing this book and also just like living and growing and reckoning with the world around me and with myself, I think I've become far less invested in narratives that like put me as the sort of hero, right? Put me as like the best actor in any given moment, right? And I think that that is really important work, particularly for men to be doing, right? And particularly for Black men, because I think so often as Black men, we feel really sort of accosted and kind of degraded by the society, right? Which is like a true feeling, which is absolutely real. But I think in feeling that, we often then sidestep or don't think about all the ways in which we perpetuate similar systems of harm and degradation on other people, right? Be they women, be they queer folks and trans folks, be they other Black men or other men, period, right? And so that is the thing I'm really interested in, like, wrestling with.
Nate Marshall, everybody. Nate, thank you so much for being on the show. If you want to support Nate, please tell the people how they can support you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to cop the book, then check out like a local bookstore. If you don't have one, go to bookshop.org because we off Amazon right now, forever. And yeah, if you want to follow me on whatever at Illuminate Mics, all one word, Illuminate MICS. Appreciate y'all.
That's Nate Marshall. Just put out Finna. Make sure you guys check that out. Thanks so much, Nate.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.